Hi everyone. My name is Ilias Krystallis from UCL, and this is work that I've done with my colleagues Eleni, also from UCL, Ornella, and Giorgio from University of Leeds. Our title of this project is Towards a Methodology for Quantifying the Benefits of BIM. Here is the list of contents. In this 15 minutes, I will talk about the background. I'll present the aims and objectives of this study, the literature review findings. I'll carry on with the methodology, and then I'll present the findings of this study, and I'll then talk about the conclusions and limitations and future research. So, with regards to the background, yesterday in one of the sessions, one interestingly talked about that in the UK we're interested about processes, whereas the rest of the world, such as Turkey, for example, are more interested in deliverables. Had I thought about this? In fact, yes, in the UK we are very much interested about the how-to, the process and the steps, and we like to follow them, but we're also very interested in making ambiguous statements of goals. So back in 2011, Paul Morel, our chief construction advisor for the government, stated that with the use of BIM, the benefits the construction should anticipate should be 20 to 25%. Then a couple of years later, another report, also commissioned by the government, exaggerated even more about the benefits and savings of BIM, and he talked about the 45% savings. Now, none of these numbers is backed up by research, and thus we became interested in this topic to see what is actually out there from an academic and practitioner's point of view. What do the findings say about this? We found that the literature is unclear if the benefits claimed by the industry are exaggerated for commercial reasons. However, with this agenda, there is a growing interest from a policy perspective, and the BASE, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, has made BIM digitalization one of its focuses. It promotes digitalization in infrastructure and construction in general, with smart cities agendas being part of the portfolio. However, the BIM and costs of benefits of adopting BIM are not very clear. One of the early efforts in identifying those benefits and convincing both the industry that is worth adopting BIM technologies was the Avanti project back in 2002, which reported a number of benefits. But now this technology has been made redundant. Mainly it touched upon CAD technology, so we can't really take this and carry on with this view. So the aim of the study is to investigate how the benefits and costs of adopting BIM can be quantified. Moving on to literature. From academic literature, we found that the benefits of BIM in development and operation asset life have been mostly qualitative. We found many papers talking about one of the major benefits of BIM being collaboration, coordination, or cooperation. But the actual numbers, the actual figures, how much it saves adopting BIM, or how much investment is required, indeed has barely been mentioned. And we also found that the lack of tangible and demonstrative outcomes could disincentivize the construction to further adopt BIM. And through informal discussions I had here with colleagues over the last 2 days, we found that the incentive, not just in the UK, but in other countries in Europe and whatnot, is being questioned. If BIM as a technology is a panacea, then why hasn't been widely being adopted so everybody is working under the same rules and processes? As an example, in the literature, in academic literature, we found some of the reported benefits trying to quantify the benefits of BIM. And in reality, it looks a bit messy, right? The numbers don't match. Some are quite modest. So, for example, the Jan and Demian article back in 2008 states that the cost savings due to BIM are in the range of 25%. Which is in line with what Paul Morel said back in 2011. But then we move on to more ambitious numbers, such as the table further below from Bride in 2013, which states that the cost savings they found in their case studies was up to 60%. And then we have some very ambitious results, such as the in DAASR paper, one of the most cited papers with regards to BIM benefits in construction, stating that some projects benefited up to, well, the return on investment was up to 11,000% or so. The Avanti project is also quite ambitious, stating that through the metrics that they've used, they found savings of in the range of 50% to 85%. Across various categories, as you can see from the slide. So, for example, 75 to 80% savings in effort to achieve design coordination, 50% savings on time spent to assess tenders and awards and subcontracts, and so on and so forth. So, in a nutshell, we found that there isn't a coherent view as to what are the benefits of BIM or the costs, in fact. How much do we need to invest? If you have an organization that is willing to shift to BIM, we don't really know how much it costs. Right. So one of the more useful papers with regards to developing a BIM methodology is the one from Barlis and Sullivan in 2012, published in Automation in Construction, where they took a hard view of how we can quantify the benefits and costs of BIM, and they developed, they came up with these 3 metrics for measuring returns due to BIM, sorry. The first one being RFIs, change orders being the second, and schedule. And then from an investment point of view, they have identified some design costs, construction costs, mainly primarily focusing on contractor costs, and then design and construction costs such as overall savings with BIM in design and construction, including scope and BIM design cost. Then we looked also at the practitioners' literature, and we found some very ambiguous numbers, which I didn't cite there, mainly from vendors claiming all these significant savings due to BIM. But the more recent report is the report of PwC, one of the big 4 consulting companies globally, which was commissioned by Innovate UK to develop a BIM methodology for measuring the benefits of BIM, published last year, 2018. And they found a very modest percent of savings due to BIM of 3% in total. Furthermore, the issue with this methodology was that it was only being tested in 2 cases, and most importantly, they didn't count for the cost of investment. So they only measured the benefits of BIM, ignoring the investment side of things. Another report from Denmark found savings, cost reductions due to BIM up to 7%, which is close to the PwC findings. So this ambiguity, by looking at both literatures, justified for us to further research the cost and benefits of BIM. So having done an initial literature review, we organized a workshop and we invited construction experts across the UK to discuss what are the costs, what are the benefits of BIM, how we can measure, do the metrics, and what sort of application areas should we test the methodology. So moving on to the findings. This is our framework. We discussed the what kind of data do we need to find, do we need to measure. So we have on one hand the BIM costs, and we particularly focus on upfront costs, and then on the other hand we focus on BIM benefits, and we broke this down into CapEx benefits and OpEx benefits. Then we asked ourselves, we looked to the how can we obtain this data? And we looked through the workshop, we asked them, how do you measure the benefits and costs of BIM? And then we discussed about the application, which type of projects should we test our methodology. So within this framework, I will now report the findings. So for the BIM costs, the investment, the practitioners highlighted the most important thing being the upfront costs. And there is a list here or indicators, if you like, of the various costs that need to be considered in a methodology. Some of them being the software acquisition and update, how much it costs to purchase certain licenses and maintain the license. Then some others mention the existing staff training, and that some companies in the UK are investing in what is called a BIM capability team, where it's being used as a central team to train the architects, the designers, the engineers, and so on and so forth. As well as developing new routines and artifacts such as processes, tools, templates in Revit and whatnot. Now, moving on to BIM benefits, we prioritize into cost reductions in construction due to less rework due to design or construction errors. So that's one area that's pretty much evident that BIM is very useful. And limited scope change, so number of change orders. We also focused in the operation. Well, I forgot to mention that these three indicators there has also been mentioned in the paper in automation in construction. So in addition to that, we found that the operational savings are also quite important. We found two categories, one being the improved maintenance, so task, again, man hours, and then equipment failure, and enhanced optimal usage of the assets, such as energy consumption. So moving on to the process of how we can test and measure what kind of data we need to collect, we found that internal metrics is one method, and in the literature, as Giorgio discusses, at least 17 assessment tools being developed globally. In the UK, a popular tool is one developed by Arup and Atkins. Others mentioned data that can be collected from human resources, such as payment data and time spent on projects. Performance evaluation processes hardly ever take place in firms because they are not ingrained in company culture. Mostly the participants mentioned that they would collect data in a qualitative matter rather than attaching those to some cost savings. We also found some external metrics and tools that have been used, such as the PwC, but as I mentioned, there's a slow industry adoption. It's quite complicated and quite robust for companies projects to actually use them. And it does not consider investment requirements, so it's quite limited. If a client wants to invest in BIM, they cannot actually take the methodology and know how much it's going to cost. And then there are some other metrics that were open for discussion, such as a new repeat business as a way for defining costs, benefits of BIM adoption. But this has to come from the company itself, and sensitive data and profits are one of the barriers for doing so. Finally, the applicability. We discussed about what kind of projects we should test this methodology, because not all projects are the same. So project complexity, the more complex the project, the more suitable the methodology and reporting the benefits will be for. We discussed about project multidisciplinarity, obviously with BIM bringing collaboration, enabling collaboration, so there'll be obvious benefits there. Project type variation was another element that we discussed. So we should expand the methodology into infrastructure, linear infrastructure as well, not just to buildings. We discussed about the procurement route, so that the methodology should enable users to select what kind of procurement route they have. So a PFI project is very different to a design and build, for example. And finally, to create a baseline of costs and benefits, we should test the methodology and refine it accordingly with BIM and non-BIM projects that are identical as much as possible. So, in a nutshell, this is the areas where we think our methodology comes together in a holistic view. So, conclusions, with regards to literature, we found that it was unclear about the benefits and costs of BIM. Showcased various examples and numbers. The evidence suggests that the process upon how the monetary costs and benefits of BIM are captured remains a black box in the industry. A reality check is needed at project, firm and sector level to shed light whether the benefits of BIM are reaped. Through the methodology, we show the importance and urgency of developing a robust but flexible way of measuring these costs and benefits of BIM. The methodology could be useful both from a supply chain point of view, but also from owner operators such as train operators and tube operators. And the methodology provides a pragmatic, we hope it's a pragmatic approach to how these BIM costs and benefits can be measured. In terms of limitations, the findings were grounded in the context of the UK construction. So the stakeholders had a view only about what's happening in the industry within the UK. And of course, the propositions are not conclusive, so we should carry more research. For future research, we should test if these propositions in this paper are true. Further propositions, of course, are required, and as a next stage, we would benefit from a comparative multinational case study. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.